Yeah, welcome back my friends. So now we'll continue with my ultimate predictions of Fighters Pass 2. This is my part 2, so make sure you watch part 1, otherwise you might not understand some things in this video. Then let's continue. Now our last group, the retro gamers. In Fighters Pass 1 we also saw that we had retro characters, and Super Smash Bros. Is about video game history, to a degree. And retro games are video game history. So much is built upon them, so many get remakes, so they are really important. And they still have a lot of people who love them, and other people that love the remakes on newer games. In the first pass we had two characters, Piranha Plant and Terry. Hero once again does not count for this, because he's a fun one. Now Piranha Plant is actually no real retro character. I mean, she's a retro character, because she's from the first Super Mario Bros. But I don't feel like that was the actual reason she was added. Though it probably was at least part of the reason, but Terry is actually a retro character. Terry is quite an old character, so based on this, I, again, think we had two retro characters last time. I think this time we will again get two retro characters. But what retro characters are they gonna be? I have no idea, Just like with some of the other themes, there are way too many retro characters to say one is more likely than the other. There are some that people keep bringing up, but I'm a real big fan of retro games. And I grew up with them, and I can tell you, yes, some of these characters they keep naming are cool, are important, but other ones are just as cool and just as important. It's just that nobody talks about them. So I will not say one is more likely than the other, just because people keep pushing for them, when they don't even know them. I already said we should get two more retro characters, but how else could they please retro gamers? Well, by celebrating video game history. And what is a big part of video game history? Yeah, it's video game consoles. And in this case, it's not the Nintendo consoles that are important. The important consoles are the consoles of Nintendo's competitors. I mean, Sakurai even went so far and had this little intro, where it showed Nintendo's consoles, and then it showed the Neo Geo. In Fighters Pass 1, we basically had two characters from consoles of competitors. The one is Terry from SNK with the Neo Geo, and the other one is Banjo and Kazooie from Microsoft and the Xbox. So based on this, I think we will again have two characters in Fighters Pass 2 from competitors who made video game consoles. Now you might be saying, but Joker's from Sega, you didn't include him. Well, he's from Atlas, so I didn't really see him as a Sega character for now, and that's why I didn't include him. Now, when I think of competitors, of companies who don't have characters in Smash, the first one is Sony with their PlayStation. But like I said at the beginning of this video, Sony doesn't put their characters on Nintendo systems, so I don't see them getting a character. And the next one that came to my mind was the TurboGrafx. And the TurboGrafx is actually associated with Hudson, who also helped to develop it. And with Hudson, I think there's one character who has a lot of fans and who a lot of people associate with Hudson, with that company. And that's Bomberman. But the thing is, Bomberman has been deconfirmed twice actually. He's an assist trophy, and then on top of that he also got a Mii costume. So I don't see him joining Smash, at least not for this DLC. But the thing is, who else could it be? Well, the only one that comes to my mind is Loadrunner. Why Loadrunner? Because he has an association with Bomberman. Bomberman actually is based on the enemies from Loadrunner. So he's a little likely based on this, but truth be told, I don't really think we'll get him, as much as I want him. Apart from that, I really have to say it's once again a wildcard pick. Now, there are some characters, if you watch my wish lists, that I actually want, that are from Hudson, and that are quite prominent for me. That would be Bonk and Mylon, but again, I cannot say that they are pretty likely. Yes, I associate them with Hudson a lot, but there are even more Hudson characters. So in the end, I really have to say, again, sadly it's a wildcard pick, but because they had the TurboGrafx, they're not unlikely. And the last company I was able to think of, who made consoles but still does not have a character in Super Smash Bros., was Atari. Their console was also called Atari. Now I said this was about competitors, and Hudson and Atari are no Nintendo competitors right now, but they used to be in the past. But while Atari actually made consoles, I looked up which series they owned, and I couldn't find a series that would actually fit Super Smash Bros. Well, actually there's the Roller Coaster Tycoon series, and while it would be fucking awesome to have the roller coaster train in Smash, I don't really see it happening, sadly. So that's it for the companies that have no characters in Smash as of yet, who produced consoles, so that didn't give us much, so the only thing left to do for me is look at companies who already got a character in Smash. And these would be Microsoft with their Xbox, and probably the biggest former competitor of Nintendo, Sega with their Sega consoles like the Sega Saturn. And lastly, once again, SNK with their Neo Geo. Now, Microsoft also has a ton of characters, but I think we can pretty much narrow it down, because most of them just haven't appeared on Nintendo systems. So for Microsoft, I only see two things. One, we get another rare character, and I have to say again, there are tons of rare characters, I cannot say which one it would be. I would really like Conker, but there's so many rare characters that I can only say a rare character would be likely, but not more than that. And apart from that, there's just one series I see, and that's Minecraft, because it has been on a Nintendo system and is also a pretty big game. And now, while I think with Microsoft these two are the most likely, Microsoft has a ton of series, from Age of Empires to Senua's Sacrifice. We could also just get a character that nobody thinks about and once again have a complete wildcard character from all of these franchises that Microsoft owns. Then there's also Sega, but with Sega, while there are Sonic characters that could obviously get in, they also have a ton of characters and I really can't narrow it down, so for them it's also once again a wildcard. They just have so many characters, I cannot say one is more likely than the other. Now, if you look at the Neo Geo from SNK, then once again SNK has a lot of characters, but I think the only character that's possible at this point of time that really stands out for me would be Marco Rossi from the Metal Slug series. So these were all the consoles I could think of. But nowadays, there are also other ways to buy games, and these are video game platforms. And the most prominent video game platform is probably Steam. Now, I would really love to see Gordon Freeman in Super Smash Bros., but Valve as of now has not put their games and characters on Nintendo systems. So once again, I don't see them getting a characters handle, as much as I would like it. The next one, which only got big in recent years, would be the Epic Games Store from Epic Games. And with them, I think there's only just one series that could get into Smash and would make some sense, and that would be Fortnite. But I have to say, as I don't play any Fortnite, I cannot talk much about it, but it's really the only game from them that has been on Nintendo, and where I can actually see a chance. Next one would be GOG.com from CD Projekt Red, who made the Witcher games, but the problem is the Witcher is not a character who originated in a video game. From all I know, he originated in a book. So the only thing that I think is left for CD Projekt Red would be Cyberpunk. But Cyberpunk hasn't been announced for the Switch for all I know, so I also don't see a character from there. So right now, I don't see them getting a character. And the last big online video game store, or platform, that came to my mind was EA's Origin. I know there's a lot of hate for EA, but Origin is also quite a big store, I think, and they also have services on the Xbox, so I think it's fair to talk about them. And while EA has a lot of series, the only series that I can see right now to get into Smash would be Mass Effect with Commander Shepard. So just to sum it up, last time we had 2 characters from competitors, and I think this time, for Fighters Pass 2, we will again have 2 characters from competitors, or like I said, from former competitors. Now I said I couldn't really say which retro characters would have a chance, but that is actually not entirely true. There's one category where I think certain characters have a way higher chance than other characters, and in this case it's the retro Nintendo characters, the true retro Nintendo characters. So up to Ultimate, every new Super Smash Bros. Game added at least one retro Nintendo character. And what they have in common is they are retro characters from the NES, or some of them even a little older. They are from the Nintendo series, which doesn't have a fighter yet, and most of them didn't really have a significance till now, which means they are really just added for the retro status that they hold for Nintendo. Now again, there would be quite a few characters that would be possible, but there's a way we can actually somewhat guess which character Sakurai would actually consider. And how would we do that? We just look at the characters that he considered in the past. And what do I mean by that? Basically, we just look at the trophies from Super Smash Bros. Melee. And why do I say considered? Mainly because he had trophies made for them back in those days, so I think they had some kind of significance to them. So what I think is, if he considered them back then, I would think that he's still considering them even today, for every new Smash Bros. Game. And let's not forget, the lore of Smash Bros. Is literally trophies coming to life. So I think let's just start, and let's have a look at the retro trophies from Super Smash Bros. Melee. So the first one is Excitebike, with the character Excitebiker, and the only thing I can really say is, I think he's likely, but there isn't really a reason why he would be any more likely than the others. The next one would be Tamagon the Dragon, from Devil World. I think he has a nice design, and like I said in the other part of this video, Japanese people love cute little icon characters, and isn't Tamagon basically a cute little icon character? I think he also has a nice moveset potential for Smash. The only problem I see, he has quite a heavy religious theme going on in this game. But truth be told, Castlevania also has some kind of religious theme, and it still got into Smash. And Simon and Richter even used crosses in their final Smashes, so I don't think that's something that would disqualify him anymore. Yeah, so the next one is Donkey Kong Jr. from Donkey Kong Jr. from his own games. Now he's the first who I think is not that likely. Number 1, we basically already have Donkey Kong Jr. with Donkey Kong. And number 2, I think his father, the real Donkey Kong, the classic Donkey Kong, is way more likely. I mean, between the two, I think classic Donkey Kong would make a lot more sense. He's a villain, and he would also have a great moveset potential. And like I said, Donkey Kong Jr. is basically already in the game. So next are the Ducks from Duck Hunt, but they're already in the game, because they're part of Duck Hunt. I don't have to say much about them. I really wanted them in Smash actually, but we already have Duck Hunt. So we also have the dog with the duck in one character, so they are also out. Then we have Bubbles, and recently I played Bubbles' game, Land. And I have to say, he has a really great moveset potential. So I don't really understand how he's not in Super Smash Bros. Yet, but I think he has quite a good chance. Then we have the Eggplant Man from Wrecking Crew, but I think the Eggplant Man is not that likely. because there's also another character in Wrecking Crew, Foreman Spike, and I think if we would get a character from Wrecking Crew, he would be the first to get in, because I just don't see anything significant about the Eggplant Man. And truth be told, the Eggplant Man could even be part of the moveset of Foreman Spike, but it wouldn't quite work the other way around, I would say. Then we have the legendary Mark Rider, and Mark Rider sometimes gets really popular in the fan community, I have to say, and he has a really great design, and he's actually quite similar to the Excite Biker, but he also has guns, and he also has guns on his motorcycle, so I feel like actually he has a way better moveset potential. He could easily get in, so once again, a character I would call likely. Then we have Balloon Fighter from Balloon Fight. Balloon Fight was actually quite a popular game back in the day, for me and for many people I knew, so I also think he's rather likely. Next up we have the legendary Stanley, a character who probably could have been the second Mario, but sadly Nintendo never used him. He looks quite funny, and I'm sure you could also give him a funny moveset, but similarly to Donkey Kong Jr., there's a character that I think in this case is way more likely, and that's once again classic Donkey Kong. I think if you look at him, he just makes classic Donkey Kong more likely once again. He fights classic Donkey Kong, who would once again be a great villain for the game, so I don't see us getting Stanley. And next up we have Pit. He could have a great moveset. Oh, but he's already in the game, right? So, next is Dr. Wright. He's sadly disqualified by our rules, because he's an assist trophy already. Then we have Donba and Hikari, from the game Shin Onigashima. I think they have a great design and they could be really great characters, and one day they could also be in Smash. So they are also not unlikely for now, but they also don't have much going for them, to be honest. Next we have Ayumi Tachibana. And with Ayumi Tachibana, I have to say, I think she's a little more likely. Number 1, because she's a little anime girl, basically. And number 2 is because Nintendo announced they would be remaking Famicom Detective Club. So she has 2 things going for her, and I think that quite raises her likelihood. Then we have Monster, the monster truck, from 3D Hot Rally. I don't think we'll get him. In the game you also play as Mario and Luigi, so they are already in the game, and I don't see us getting a truck, sadly. But I think it would be quite great to see him in some other form, like an item or a stage element one day. Let's just hope that happens. Oh, and lastly we have the Sheriff, but he's also sadly disqualified, because once again he is an assist trophy. Yeah, and that's it with our real Nintendo Retro characters, the important ones basically, so I would really not be surprised to see one of them, because like I said, we did not have a real Nintendo Retro character for Smash Ultimate, and it's called Smash Ultimate, let's not forget that. How can it be Ultimate if we don't even get the character that we got every time? Now we can also look at the characters that we already got, so just to name some of them, in Melee we had the Ice Climbers, in Brawl we had Pit, in Smash 4 we had Duck Hunt. Yeah, Duck Hunt. I mean, come on, if we get Duck Hunt, don't you think that is actually something which is important to Nintendo and Sakurai? And that's it with the retro Nintendo characters. And now we have a category that was basically the entire reason why I made this video. It's basically villains, antagonists, and enemies. And in Fighters Pass 1, Piranha Plant was basically the only villain or enemy character, which I found quite odd. I mean, I keep calling this Fighters Pass 1, I know it was separate, but I actually had to pay for it. So for me it was not quite separate. But what I found even more odd was that during Fighters Pass 1, during Banjo's reveal trailer, they showed the Heroes vs Villains montage. And for all I know, Banjo and Kazooie are not villains. So I get the feeling that there was a villain supposed to be in Fighters Pass 1, and then he was pushed to Fighters Pass 2. But because we have this Heroes vs Villains theme, I would also think there was already a villain planned for Fighters Pass 2. And that would give us 2 villains in Fighters Pass 2. At least that's what I think is most likely. So I don't think the villains are as likely if, number 1, the series already has a villain, and most of them have also been shown in the Heroes vs Villains montage, and number 2, the series already got a character as a DLC. And for Nintendo that would be Mario, and Fire Emblem, and also ARMS now. Now, I think the most likely villains would be from series that are already in Super Smash Bros. Why? Because the theme is Heroes vs Villains, and not just villains. Now, I would say villains from other games are also likely, but like this, it would make even more sense in my opinion. Yeah, so next let's look at all the series in Super Smash Bros. And see if villains would make sense for them. Oh, and one last thing, the villains should also be iconic. So even if I haven't played the series, as someone who's on the internet, I should know about them. So Mario's out because it got the Piranha Plant as a DLC. Donkey Kong is also sadly out because it got King K. Rool this time. Zelda's obviously out, it has Ganondorf. Metroid, once again out because it got Ridley. So our first franchise that would qualify would be the Yoshi series. But truth be told, I don't see it as likely as the other series which I will name. Why? Well, Yoshi is also basically part of the Mario franchise. I think that makes it less likely, but if we were to disregard that, I think there would essentially be 2 characters that could happen. The first one would be Kamek, who people say is the main villain from the Yoshi series. Now I have to admit I do not know much about the Yoshi series, but that's what they say. And the second one would be Baby Bowser. But for him I don't think he is likely, because we already have Standard Bowser and Bowser Jr. And that's why I think yet another Bowser is not that likely. So for Kirby we already have Meta Knight and King Dedede. So Star Fox also already has a villain with Wolf. Pokemon has basically Mewtwo. So the next series that would satisfy this idea would be Earthbound. And for Earthbound I think 2 characters are very likely. So the first one would be Porky, and the second one would be Gygus. I think Porky would be more likely than Gygus, and I know I already mentioned them in this video, But this is for the villains, so once again, they get some likelihood. And just like Porky, Gygas also does not have a spirit. Next up is F-Zero. From F-Zero, it would basically be Black Shadow. Then we have the Ice Climber series. There aren't really any villains or enemies. I mean, there are some enemies, like the Polar Bear and some other enemies, but I don't think they're significant enough to make them likely. Fire Emblem already got a character. Game & Watch, once again, I don't think there really is a villain. Kid Icarus. Kid Icarus basically already has Dark Pit, but we have to say he's an Echo, so I wouldn't discount Kid Icarus in this case. And with Kid Icarus, we have two actually. The first one would be Hades from Kid Icarus Uprising, and the second one would be Medusa. And I can't really say one is more likely than the other, because Hades is from the game Sakurai created, but Medusa is the actual main antagonist of the series. So next up is WarioWare. But WarioWare doesn't have any villains as far as I know. But the thing is, Wario also has a second series, Wario Land. And from Wario Land, the most important villain would be Captain Syrup. Then we have Metal Gear Solid or Metal Gear, and there two characters come to my mind. The first one being Big Boss, but I think he's actually an anti-hero, he's not a pure villain. And the second one, who may not be that relevant, but also has some iconic status in the gaming world, is Psycho Mantis.
That's right! I will show you my psychokinetic power! I can read you like an open book. I see that you enjoy games. You like Nintendo games, don't you? Still don't believe me? This is no trick. It's true power. Now I'll read more deeply into your soul. Did you enjoy playing Smash Brothers? Oh, you are a coward. You have not played Super Smash Brothers very often. I told you, I can read your every thought.
But if we look at both of them, I think Big Boss is way more likely.
You doubt my power.
There's also a problem with him, because we already have Snake, so that makes him a little less likely, because he's a clone. Well, I think in the game actually Snake is the clone of Big Boss, but whatever, I think you get what I mean. But from the gameplay I've seen, his moveset could be quite different, so I wouldn't completely discount him. So next is the Sonic series. From Sonic, one of the biggest villains in gaming, Dr. Eggman, who I think is probably the most likely out of all these villains. And another character I've already mentioned is Metal Sonic. But again, he's once again a Sonic, so I think Dr. Eggman is way more likely. Then we have Pikmin, but for Pikmin I also don't see a villain or enemy likely. I mean, it has some enemy creatures, but I just don't see them as likely. Then Rob. Well, Rob doesn't have any villains that I know. Then we have Animal Crossing. Just as with Rob, I think there aren't really villains in Animal Crossing, but for all I know, some people consider Tom Nook a villain because you owe him money, and maybe Rossetti because of his attitude, but let's be honest, I don't think they are true villains. Then we have Mega Man, and Mega Man has a lot of villains, but I think the important ones are already in the game. Dr. Wily and Zero as assist trophies, and Proto Man as a Mii costume. And I cannot say one of the robot bosses in Mega Man is more important or more likely. There's also Bass, who's probably more of an anti-hero, but that still kinda counts, I'd say. And another one who I didn't even know myself really, is some guy named Sigma, who's the main antagonist of the Mega Man X series. But truth be told, I haven't heard much about him. That's about it I can say. So that also means I don't think a villain from Mega Man is likely. Then next up we have the Wii Fit series. Wii Fit once again does not have any villains as far as I know. Well, maybe except for fat people. I think we should just continue. Then we have the Punch-Out series. Now for Punch-Out, I think all of the other boxes are possible, because they're also enemies of Little Mac and kind of villains. I don't know if any of them is actually quite evil or whatever, but you have to fight them. But once again, none of them stands out for me, so I won't say one is more likely than the other, but I definitely think one day we might get another Punch-Out character, so let's not forget about them. So I just don't think we will get anything from the Mii series, and truth be told, I don't know anything about it. Then we have Pac-Man, but for Pac-Man the only villains I know or enemies are the ghosts. And they're both assist trophies and part of Pac-Man's moveset. So I don't think there's a character from Pac-Man that could get in. Then we have Xenoblade. Now with Xenoblade I have to say, I think it's likely. But the problem is I know almost nothing about Xenoblade. So it could be a villain from any of the Xenoblade games. I don't know if some of them are more important, or stand out more, or make more sense. I think a Xenoblade character is likely, but in this case I can just not name them. Then Duck Hunt, all the characters are basically already in the game. For Street Fighter I think it's also possible. For Street Fighter, the most important villain characters are M. Bison, who I think is like the main antagonist of most of the games, and then also Akuma. And the only thing I can say for Akuma, I think he would also work as an echo for Ryu, so that might make him a little less likely. And M. Bison is not really that iconic in the world of gaming, I would say, but I also can't really name anything that would make M. Bison more likely. So we should not forget about these two, but it doesn't mean that I think they're likely. Then, next we have the Final Fantasy series, or Final Fantasy VII, we don't even know, and there the two that would come to my mind are Sephiroth and Kefka. Now I think Sephiroth is way more likely, because it's just odd with Final Fantasy, that they focus on Final Fantasy VII only. Like I said at the beginning, it's heroes versus villains, so Cloud would get his villain, but I think we should also mention Kefka, because I also see him being mentioned on the internet. Once again, out of these two, I think Sephiroth is the more likely one. But once again, for Final Fantasy, I have to say it's a series that I don't know much about, so maybe the other games have some really iconic villains, but I don't know about them. And like I said, this is mostly about them being iconic. Then we have the Bayonetta series. I think there's that one guy who's a spirit, who could be possible, but truth be told, I haven't heard much about him. I don't know anything about Bayonetta, so I can't really consider him. Then we have Splatoon. It's quite obvious. It would be the Octolings. The only problem with them is it would probably make more sense as Echoes, so I don't know why they would be part of this DLC Fighters Pass. And lastly, we have Castlevania. Now, for Castlevania, the most iconic villain would be Dracula. But the problem is, Dracula is not actually a video game character. He might be in Super Smash Bros. Already, but I sadly don't see him joining anytime soon. I have to admit, it would be cool to have all of these iconic monsters, all of these iconic movie monsters, playable in Smash Bros., but just like with Dracula, they are based on something else. So I don't see them joining Smash, at least not for now. So there's actually one that stands out a little, and that's Death. He was even in the reveal trailer of Simon and Richter. And for all I know, he's also not directly based on books or movies. And we also got a scythe as an item in Smash Bros., which is quite cool. But that's about it I can say. He may be the most likely out of all the Castlevania characters, but that doesn't mean he's actually likely. So, like I said, first time around we only had Piranha Plant, but I think 2 villains or enemies are likely for Fighters Pass 2. Yeah, and this is once again a good point to end this part. We will continue the video in part 3. As always, leave any questions, criticism or comments below. And remember this, you're in the Daemonnoobland.